Greetings everyone, Rob from Title Here Games again, and I realized in the last little video I did not explain how the dialogue system worked. I gave you the high level overview, but I didn't really go in depth with it. So there's a few things that we have here. So you'll notice that this code is probably really messy, probably not even the best way to do this. I don't really care about that stuff. It works, and it doesn't make performance too terrible. So I'm happy with it. So let's start with the user interface. Let me close out of everything up here real quick. So here's just some little sample text that I threw on here. I'm not sure if this is like an Unreal thing, but like whenever I zoom out, it does that. I've not had it affect anything in the game yet, so I've just chosen to ignore it. So for the user interface, there's just a canvas panel with a border on the top, border on the bottom, and inside of that border, the bottom border, there's a horizontal box with a name, a little thing of space. These are all text box components, by the way, or text components. Sorry, this isn't the Windows Presentation Foundation, but we have text for the name, some space characters, just space these two out so they're not colliding with each other or whatever, and then the actual dialogue content. And then there's also this button here. I realized I misspoke. I said you can press any key. That used to be true. I changed that because now it's just you click and it will do that. I'm probably going to change this eventually because I'd like to add multiple choices for dialogue at certain points. But for how they go in and out, if we pull up animations here, there's start dialogue. And if we click space, I think it's, yeah, you can do that. And then it goes in like that. Very smooth-ish. It's linear. That's the curves. It's linear. And for out, and for out, it goes like that. Very much reminiscent to Deus Ex. So with all of that done, let's go ahead and take a look at the graph that we have here. So in Construct, it just gets the Dialogue Manager class that we have up here, this actual spaghetti code mess. And it gets the first one of it because there's only going to be one in a scene, and it sets this variable we have here to it. And once we're done, once we start, this is a custom event. Once dialogue starts, it'll play the start dialogue animation. It'll move on to the next one, and it sets can continue to true. And can continue is a Boolean for this button here. And of course, it's all fed through. I did not talk about the struct here. So each line of dialogue is this little struct that we have here. So it has five fields, 2 text fields, an actor field, and 2 Boolean fields. The 2 text ones are the name of the person who's speaking, the dialogue, which is what they're saying. Speaker refers to the person who is talking currently. Now, I'm keeping this in here because it does serve a use with pointing the first person camera at who's talking. Originally, it was put, we'll go here to check out one of our test characters here, and we'll notice that each one has a speaker. And if it's the player, it's just set to none because I'm not sure how to reference the player class. I guess I do have player line right here, so I could use that for something. But you'll just notice that it's only referring to them, despite the fact that it doesn't change line to line. This is just for when you first start talking. So the very first one, it'll get that at player line. It's mostly, for now, it's just to change the color of the name so you can distinguish between players and non-players. And last line is for when you click continue, it'll end. And that's really about all to explain here. It's really just, I mean, I'm going to kind of go over some implementation. I'm showing the implementation, but mostly it's just going to be high-level theory and concepts that I'm going through. As we can see, dialogue line speaker for next dialogue doesn't even do anything because this struct has been split up. So let's go back to the dialogue manager class, and let me I'll full screen this. So event begin play. So whenever the scene starts, it just basically just gets references to all of our variables, to our external components that we need to reference, or actors, either one. and it'll set it to any sort of variables that we have, like the jukebox, which is just what I call like the music manager thing, whatever you want to say. And this is just to change the music when you get into conversation. And I try to use like the same references as much as I can. I don't know if that actually has an effect on performance. Obviously, I don't follow that rule very consistently. But that's just what I've heard, and sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't, because whenever I try to use the same reference in like 30 different places, it looks like crap. Anyways, start dialogue. So whenever you first talk to someone, this is what plays. So it sets our current line to 0, because when there's multiple speakers, I found that if I don't set it back to 0 when it starts, it'll just play their last line of dialogue. And we don't want that, obviously, if you go talk to somebody you've never spoken to before. We set in dialogue to true, which is mostly for the player to disable input. Actually, this was back to check if you press any key, then it would advance dialogue. It doesn't do that anymore. I might have it do that again, but we'll see. So so this one here takes in an array of the dialogue line class, this struct here. And what it uses from here it sets this internal one. I can't remember why I did that. I think it's just to avoid messy references or whatever. And afterwards, it will cast to our first-person character. It'll focus the camera on who's talking, which is what this is about, which is why we break it here to get the speaker. That's what speaker is used for. And after that, we switch the track from the ambient with this little enum here, from the ambient to the conversation track. I will actually go and quickly show that one as well. Music type, this is an enum. Thankfully, one thing I really love about Unreal Engine 5 is that they have like a little built-in thing for enums, like an automatic switch statement form. It's really nice. See, here I use, as little references I can. Obviously, I could use one for everything, but I don't, because I don't like how this looks. I know there's ways to make it look good, but I don't think it really hurts that much. I might do it eventually, but I'm kind of on a time constraint here, so you'll see that we don't have a default for here. Don't remember why. Oh, right, that's because whenever I place it in the scene, I want to manually specify it instead of having like a default one. So that way, if I do something wrong, I'll know. So anyways, this is it's fairly simple here. It just fades out whatever's playing. Unless the level starts, then it just plays it and sets the volume and whatnot. And it'll play ambient by default because you're not going to be talking to someone when you load into a level. And if you are, it's just going to fade it out anyways, so I don't see the big deal. But yeah, so basically, regardless of which one it does, it'll fade it out, have a delay, set the sound to whatever you choose based on the enum. It'll adjust the volume, and then it will play it. And that works pretty well. So, back to the dialogue manager class. So after we've switched the tracks, we go start the dialogue. And this is on our UI, which we got a reference to up here. Afterwards, we change the input mode to be UI only, which is probably why the pressing any key, that's probably why that does not work. Because it won't get any sort of your input unless it's mouse clicks, which is why I have the button on the UI, because you can still click that. And this is more just, boilerplate to show the cursor, just so you know that you can actually move around and stuff. I might just have like a click like a clicking anywhere to continue thing, just to let the player know. And obviously some development stuff. It'll just let you know dialogue is started. So, next line. So if it's not the last line, then we will increment the ID current dialogue line. This is a little counter that I have, because dialogue only goes linearly. What I could do instead is maybe have like in the struct have a reference to itself in there that you just like drag into. Maybe I could do that for multiple lines of dialogue. But for now, it works just with a little integer that just goes up every next line if it's not the last. And of course it prints a string, and it feeds in the relevant information. Target is for the is just a reference. Dialogue line is obviously the struct that we created. And if it is the last one, we call this function here, and it goes into the UI. It'll play that little animation. It'll print a string that says dialogues ended. It gives us input back, and we allow control of the pawn, and we switch tracks back. And that's basically how that works. It's pretty good, honestly, all things considered. It works really effectively. I was surprised I was able to figure this out on my own with very little assistance. Mostly just tutorials on like how do I rotate the camera. You know, I've never done that before. But for the most part, this is all my own thinking, which I'm very proud of. It's usually what I aim to do. I always try to I like to be able to do things on my own. I feel really good when I'm able to do that. It lets me know that I'm, I'm improving as a programmer. Now, it's not to say you're an awful programmer if you have to watch tutorials, because it happens to the best of us, But I try to do it as little as possible. It's like a benchmark against myself, so I can see how much I've come, or see how far I've improved. But yeah, that is basically that. Just a little technical explanation on how this works. Because if there's one thing that always, aggravates me about devlogs, is when people don't really explain how their stuff works. It's just the technical side of me who has to know everything. I just love learning about this stuff. And it's just so frustrating when people don't do it. But yeah, aside, that is basically it. I will see you all in the next one.